Hey there, friends. Pastor Jason here. Glad you can join me for daily devotionals. Today we're in Exodus 7 and 8. We're going to see some of the beginning signs, wonders, plagues that the Lord is going to use through Moses and Aaron to bring the people out of Egypt. So let's get right to it. Verse 1 of chapter 7, the Lord answered Moses, "See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and Aaron your brother will be your prophet. You must say whatever I command you. Then Aaron your brother must declare it to Pharaoh so that he will let the Israelites go from his land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Pharaoh will not listen to you, but I will put my hand on Egypt and bring the divisions of my people, the Israelites, out of the land of Egypt by great acts of judgment. The Egyptians will know that I am Yahweh when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the Israelites from among them." So Moses and Aaron did this, and they did just as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When Pharaoh tells you perform a miracle, tell Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh. It will become a serpent." So Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh and did just as the Lord had commanded. Aaron threw down his staff before Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a serpent. But then Pharaoh called the wise men and sorcerers, the magicians of Egypt, and they also did the same thing by their occult practices. Each one threw down his staff and it became a serpent. But Aaron's staff swallowed their staffs. However, Pharaoh's heart hardened and he did not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Pharaoh's heart is hard. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. When you see him walking out to the water, stand ready to meet him by the bank of the Nile. Take in your hand the staff that turned into a snake. Tell him, 'Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to tell you, let my people go, so that they may worship me in the wilderness. But so far you have not listened. This is what Yahweh says. Here is how you will know that I am Yahweh. Watch, I will strike the water in the Nile with the staff of my hand, and it will turn to blood. The fish of the Nile will die, the river will stink, and the Egyptians will be unable to drink water from it.' So the Lord said to Moses, 'Tell Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the rivers, the canals, ponds, and all their water reservoirs, and they will become blood. There will be blood throughout the land of Egypt, even in wooden and stone containers.' Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord had commanded. In the sight of Pharaoh and his officials, he raised the staff and struck the water in the Nile, and all the water in the Nile turned to blood. The fish of the Nile died, and the river smelled so bad that the Egyptians could not drink water from it. There was blood throughout the land of Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same thing by their occult practices. So Pharaoh's heart hardened, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Pharaoh turned around, went into his palace, and didn't even take this to heart. All the Egyptians dug around the Nile for water to drink because they could not drink the water from the river. 7 days passed after the Lord struck the Nile. Chapter 8. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go into Pharaoh and tell him, this is what Yahweh says. Let my people go so that they may worship me. But if you refuse to let them go, then I will plague all your territory with frogs. The Nile will swarm with frogs. They will come up and go into your palace, into your bedroom and on your bed, into your houses of your officials and your people, and into your ovens and kneading bowls. The frogs will come up on you, your people, and all your officials." The Lord then said to Moses, "Tell Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, canals, and ponds, and cause the frogs to come up onto the land of Egypt." When Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same thing by their occult practices and brought frogs up onto the land of Egypt. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Ask Yahweh to remove the frogs from me and my people, then I will let the people go and they can sacrifice to Yahweh." Moses said to Pharaoh, "You make the choice rather than me. When should I ask on behalf of you and your officials and your people that the frogs be taken away from you and your houses and remain only in the Nile?" "Tomorrow," he answered. Moses replied, "As you have said, so you know there is no one like Yahweh our God. The frogs will go away from you, your houses, your officials, and your people. The frogs will remain only in the Nile." After Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, Moses cried out to the Lord for help concerning the frogs that he had brought against Pharaoh. The Lord did as Moses had said. The frogs in the houses, courtyards, and fields died. They piled them in countless heaps, and there was a terrible odor in the land. But when Pharaoh saw there was relief, he hardened his heart and would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth. It will become gnats throughout the land of Egypt." And they did this. Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff, and when he struck the dust of the earth, gnats were on man and beast. All the dust of the earth became gnats throughout the land of Egypt. Magicians tried to produce gnats using their occult practices, but they could not. The gnats remained on man and beast. "This is the finger of God," the magicians said to Pharaoh. But Pharaoh's heart hardened. He would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. The Lord said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning, present yourself to Pharaoh, and when you see him going out to the water, tell him, 'This is what Yahweh says, let my people go so that they may worship me.' But if you will not let my people go, then I will send swarms of flies against you, your officials, your people, and your houses. The Egyptians' houses will swarm with flies, and so will the land where they live. But on that day, I will give special treatment to the land of Goshen, where my people are living. No flies will be there. This way you will know that I, Yahweh, am in the land. I will make a distinction between my people and your people. This sign will take place tomorrow." And the Lord did this. Thick swarms of flies went into Pharaoh's palace and the officials' houses. Throughout Egypt, the land was ruined because of the swarms of flies. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Go, sacrifice to your God within the country." But Moses said, "It would not be right to do that, because what will we sacrifice to the Lord? Our God is detestable to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice what the Egyptians detest in front of them, won't they stone us? We must go a distance of 3 days into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he instructs us." Pharaoh responded, "I will let you go and sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, but don't go very far. Make it an appeal for me." "As soon as I leave you," Moses said, "I will appeal to the Lord, and tomorrow the swarms of flies will depart from Pharaoh, his officials, and his people. But Pharaoh must not act deceptively again by refusing to let the people go and sacrifice to the Lord." Then Moses left Pharaoh's presence and appealed to the Lord. The Lord did as Moses said. He removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh and his officials and his people. Not one was left. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also and did not let the people go. We're going to leave it right there. We'll pick it up again tomorrow with the plagues. Now, what do we learn from this? What is there to learn? We recognize that we do as people have the capacity to harden our hearts against the Lord. Sometimes we'll see things happening and we'll just chalk it up to something else other than God trying to interact with us. And we're going to read some difficult scripture like that the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. You know, there are times when the Lord has something to show to someone other than you, right? And sometimes the way what you're going through in life and how you respond to the Lord makes an important difference in someone else's life. Now, here in this case, Pharaoh is an instrument of the Lord. And what is he doing? Just like the Lord said right at the very beginning of chapter 7, that he says in verse 4, Pharaoh will not listen to you, but I will put my hand on Egypt and bring the divisions of my people, the Israelites, out of the land of Egypt by great acts of judgment. The Egyptians will know that I am Yahweh when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the Israelites from among them. It's all so that the Egyptians will learn who Yahweh is. Have you learned who Yahweh is? Sometimes, like as we get older, we tend to pick up, oh, this might be the Lord trying to get my attention. Is the Lord trying to get your attention today? I hope so. I hope you're wary enough and paying attention enough to see where he's trying to get your attention. May you respond in servitude to him. With that, I hope this has been a blessing to you. Go on out, be a blessing to those around you. If you've got snow outside, see if you can't shovel a neighbor's sidewalk. And I will see you tomorrow as we continue in Exodus.